Frankie Collins' list for where he might transfer or return is down to 6 teams, and I'm going to tell you why you should stay at Arizona State.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast, and stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in. Today, we are going to be back on the hardwood, taking a look at the potential future of star point guard Frankie Collins. Of course, Collins opted to enter the transfer portal, and he did leave the possibility open to returning to Arizona State. However, he was also looking at the possibility to go to a new program. And it's just part of the landscape of college basketball and college sports in general. Like, I know that there's a lot of people who are mad, and there's a lot of people who are saying some pretty out-of-pocket things about Collins and his decision to enter the transfer portal. And I want to make it very clear where I stand and continue to stand is that you need to take care of yourself. So, Frankie Collins, take care of yourself. You don't need to worry about the fans who are peeved or the fans who are supportive. You just need to do what's best for you, whether that's education, whether that's situation, whether that's NIL. It doesn't matter. All that matters is you're taking care of yourself. And I am 100% supportive of the players. Now, do I get bummed out when guys leave? Of course I do. I don't want to lose our players. Last year really stunk when we lost so many different guys. And we went into this offseason and we lost more guys. Jemiah Neal's in the transfer portal. The freshmen Akil Watson and Braylon Green are in the transfer portal. Now Frankie Collins is out there. Like, I don't want to lose him, and it would really suck. But at the end of the day, he just needs to do what's best for him. And again, he's also left Arizona State in his possibilities to return. So it's not like the book is completely closed here. He could still withdraw from the portal, come back for his last season, and then see what happens. So with that in mind, he's down to 6 schools. ASU is one of those schools. The other 5 include Florida, SMU, TCU, San Diego State, and Cal. Now, there are some really good opportunities here to cash out and make a little bit of NIL, and that's Florida, SMU, TCU. To me, are the programs that would be able to offer Frankie Collins quite a bit if this is in fact NIL driven. And everyone's going to jump on that and say that that's what it is, but we don't know that for sure. Because Frankie Collins transferred from Michigan to Arizona State initially, and I'll tell you right now, NIL was not one of the reasons why. And he said as much himself as that money was not a deciding factor. So it still could be that possibility that this has nothing to do with NIL. Could it? Sure, of course it could. That drives a lot of people, but we can't sit here and make assumptions that that's the reason he's leaving. Now, again, if that is, then there's programs that can offer significantly more than what ASU can do. Florida, obviously, at the very top of the list, they're not shy about being able to shell out some NIL opportunities for their players. So there's possibilities there. There's possibilities that he's just looking for a fresh start. There's possibilities he's looking for a program where he can contend, which is where a San Diego State would come into play because they make the tournament pretty often. They were in the finals just a couple of years ago. It really depends what he values. But I'm here to explain why he should stay at Arizona State. Now that that's all out of the way, I've got 4 main points here that I think should be able to drive Frankie Collins to stay at Arizona State for his senior season. We'll go ahead and start with this. He's a proven commodity at Arizona State. We all know who he is. We all know what he's about. He's a good defender, a great defender, somebody who's able to generate turnovers and has really gotten better as a shooter. This past year, he went from under 10 points a game to leading the team with 13.8 points per game. He was averaging almost 3 steals per game. He shot just under 43% from the field. He wasn't great from deep. He's got a lot to do on the free throw line, but the bottom line here is that Frankie Collins really started to come into his own in the 2023-24 season. He is a proven commodity at Arizona State. We understand who he is, what he's about. We also understand that he's slowly become a little bit of a fan favorite, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the show. But he's proven here, and he knows what he is at Arizona State, and we know what he is at Arizona State. He's somebody that has just worked his way into the program so well, and it's really difficult to imagine a situation where he's not a part of Arizona State, and it's hard to imagine a situation where he's not able to really continue to build himself into one of the all-timers. And again, these are points that we're going to be going into more detail about as we proceed through the podcast. But we know what he is here. He's really found himself a niche as a defender. And that's something that Arizona State really benefited from last year. One of the things that really helped them to be able to stay competitive in games was their ability to get fast break points. A lot of those came because of Frankie Collins generating turnovers. He led the way for Arizona State. He was at the forefront for everything that they were able to do successfully. And even in a 14 and 18 season, you take Frankie Collins off that team, and I don't know if they're winning 10 games. He was that important to the team. And with everything that he was able to do, everything that was able to be developed for him, it just helped him become the player that he is. And that's such a critical aspect here for him to consider coming back, is he knows what he is here. We know what he is. Why change something up? Why fix something that isn't broken? He's growing as a shooter too. He's somebody who is developing into a more all-around and well-rounded player. There's aspects he can improve on, like certainly the free throw percentage has just got to get significantly better. But he is a 42.6% shooter. He's somebody who can attack from the paint to outside the arc, off the window, all the good stuff. He's able to generate a lot for Arizona State. So why try and go to a new program and start over? Again, this is stuff that we're going to get more into detail here in just a moment. But the bottom line here, he's proven. The fans know who he is. His teammates know who he is. He knows who he is at Arizona State. But of course, that goes along with being the face of the program, and it goes along with the fact that he is in a established system. And we're going to get into more detail on that in just 1 second. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV shows, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend of baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV also created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the sports world, from March Madness to the NBA, Major League Baseball, and more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked it out, trust me, you should. To learn more, go to www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and find that you're turning down the volume because of all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports, all without the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get back into our conversation now. We're going to take a look at the next two important factors here that could lead Frankie Collins to return to Arizona State. And I plead my case, starting with, you're the face of the program. We kind of teed this up a little bit, talking about him being a proven commodity for the team. Like I said, everyone knows who Frankie Collins is. If you watch ASU basketball, you see this guy just all around the court doing all sorts of different stuff from the team. He's good defensively. He's become better offensively. He was averaging 32.3 minutes, which was second on the team behind Jemiah Neal's 32.8. So, I mean, he's out there for the vast majority of these games. And he does so much for you as well. He is a good shooter. He was one of your best rebounders last year. And keep in mind, this is a 6'1" point guard who's not afraid to go up, be aggressive, and do whatever he can to put this team on his back. So if you pay attention to Sun Devils basketball, you know who number one is. You know who Frankie Collins is. And he's a fan favorite at this point because of all the things he does. And sure, he's not a perfect player, but over the last 10 years, I would tell you he's probably one of the 5 best players they've had. He's certainly been one of the most consistent over the last 2 years, and somebody who has rarely missed starts for the team, because he was basically a full-time starter the last 2 years. I'm not sure if he missed any games with starting, I should say. He's the guy. He is the one who runs the court for ASU, both in a literal sense and in a figurative sense. He runs things for this offense. He runs things for this defense. He runs things for this team. He is the face. And he's also needed to be the face for a changing program, because we did mention that Jemiah Neal and Braylon Green and Akeel Watson are in the transfer portal now. And there's some veterans that aren't going to be with the team any longer. You've got Bryson Long, who was a senior for the team. You had Jose Perez, who was a graduate for the team. Alonzo Gaffney was a senior for the team. There's a lot of other players that are also leaving the program for various reasons. There's a lot of change that's coming here. The one thing that you need is a constant. Frankie Collins is that constant, and that's something that could be very attractive for him to return to the program, is knowing that you're the guy. You are the face of the program. You are going to be leading the charge, and for better or for worse, you are the face of the program. Like, they could have another 4-18 season, or they could be a 20-win team and go to March Madness. It's going to be on the back of Frankie Collins if they're able to do that. I truly believe that Frankie is absolutely capable of leading this team. He's done it this past season. Even his first year here, he ran the point. He is that kind of capable player for you. And he knows that. So why mess with a good thing? Why not just come back? They need you, quite frankly. Because if you are losing Frankie Collins, the only starter you're returning from last year is Adam Miller. Sean Phillips will be back, Brian Celebonge, Kamari Lands, and all of your freshmen that are coming in. And it's a good freshman class, but all of those guys were not necessarily full-time starters for the team besides Adam Miller. You need someone to be able to lead that unit. And sure, maybe that's more of an ASU needs him than Frankie Collins needs him. But that need is going to be something that Frankie could look at and sit there and go, yeah, you know what? I know how important I am to this program, and I'm going to come back to this program because they're going to look at me for everything that they need. And speaking of which, it's an established system. He knows how things work here, and he's had good success. He knows the defense they run. He knows how aggressive ASU likes to be, whether it's a full court press or the zone that they're playing or whatever it is that they're running. Frankie knows how things are played at Tempe. Frankie Collins is somebody who's able to help dictate the pace as well. Somebody of Frankie Collins' caliber is going to be able to get things rolling for this team. And it's an established system that he knows. He's been here 2 years. And he's seen significant playing time. Again, I don't know how many starts he's missed, if he even has missed a start. He knows how things are run. And Bobby Hurley is back, and his connection with Bobby Hurley is huge. That's one of the factors here that could drive Collins to stay, is knowing that, hey, I don't need to start from scratch. Because let's say he goes to San Diego State. First of all, he may not be a full-time starter. He may not be a full-time starter anywhere, at Cal, SMU, any of the other schools. He could be looking at a six-man role. He could be looking at a depth role. Whereas at Arizona State, he knows he is the starter, and like the starter for the program. He is established, not only on the team, but in the system. He knows how things are run. He knows the expectations, and he knows how to get the most out of himself and out of his teammates. Having somebody like Frankie Collins here is so pivotal. And it's pivotal for him too, because having to learn a new system is never easy. No matter if you're going to a big name program or a smaller program, you need to understand your assignments. You need to understand the expectations, and you need to understand your role with the team. Frankie knows what his role is at Arizona State. But again, he goes to San Diego State or Florida or whatever, he may be looking at a vastly different role. And I'm not saying he can't step into it, because I think he's very capable of playing at a high level wherever he goes. But he may not be as comfortable as he was at Arizona State. I mentioned earlier, he's got a niche at Arizona State. He's a great defender. He's somebody that's able to attack the glass. He gets his layups. If he's able to just continue to grow, feels like the sky's the limit for this kid. And there's a lot here that's on the line for Frankie Collins to step into some really amazing uncharted territory that we haven't seen over the last 10 years. I mean, you've had a handful of guys, but there's potentially some history on the line here for Frankie Collins. I'm going to dive into that in more detail here in just a moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tourney, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. One more time, wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks for making us your first listen of the day. In case you guys don't know, we are keeping you up to date on spring football that's going on for ASU. There's practices Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I will give you updates on the Tuesday and Thursday practices that I am in attendance for, and I will give you word of mouth for the Saturday practice. I'll keep you up to date. So now it's never been a better time to hit that subscribe button. Let's round out this podcast. Why should Frankie Collins stay at Arizona State? Well, we talked about he's a proven commodity. We talked about he's the face of the program. We talked about it's an established system. He knows what his expectations are. He knows that he's a fan favorite. He knows what is going to be run at Arizona State. He knows the offense. He knows the defense. He knows the coaching staff. And he's somebody that, quite frankly, ASU needs. But maybe biggest of all, there's some history on the line here for Frankie Collins. He comes back. You're talking about a 3-year starter and full-time starter for 3 years who has made huge impacts on the program. Like I kind of mentioned before we jumped into this part here, over the last 10 years, there's been a handful of guys that you can talk about as all-time historic players, like a Remy Martin. Sure. Frankie Collins? I don't know. I hesitate to say you hang his number in the rafters, but I mean, you'd be talking about a 3-year starter and somebody who could potentially continue to grow. We saw really good growth from year 1 to year 2. Just imagine he takes another step forward. Let's say he goes from 13.8 points per game to 16 or 17. Let's say he goes from a 57% free throw shooter to around 70. He goes from 42.6 field goal to closer to 45. Maybe he gets better as a three-point shooter. We already know he's good at steals. He just set the single-season steals record. What if he breaks his own record? He's capable of doing that. He does all of that. We're going to talk about him years down the road, for sure. We're going to look back at the 2020s and we're going to go, man, you remember Frankie Collins? God, he was so much fun to watch. He was somebody who came to the program from Michigan as a sophomore and just dominated from day one. We're going to have nothing but praises to sing of Frankie Collins. And even if he leaves, we're still going to have praises to sing about him. But if he stays, I mean, it's really difficult to imagine a scenario where Frankie Collins is not talked about as at least one of the greats of the decade, potentially longer. And again, I do want to hesitate from saying put his jersey in the rafters. He would still need to have a phenomenal season. He would need to build upon what he did this past season. You probably need to be going to March Madness. You probably need to win a game, maybe 2 games. You need to be able to turn next season into a wildly successful season. And again, that doesn't mean going to the Sweet 16. Maybe you win 2 games from the play-in and then the round of 64. Maybe you do go to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. Maybe you are a 20-win team or a 22 or a 23-win team. Maybe you finish second in the Pac-12. Maybe you run the table and get a Pac-12 championship. Who knows? But your potential to do that drastically increases with Frankie Collins on the roster. Take Frankie Collins away. Like I said, this was a team that I don't know if they win 10 games. And if Frankie Collins wins, there's a lot of unknowns because there's a lot of young players that are coming in. You got 5 players in the recruiting class. You've only got 1 guard who's coming in Bo Aldridge, who could potentially replace Frankie Collins. Like, he is the heart and soul of this program. And to clarify, I'm not saying all those things are 100% guaranteed to happen. You could once again be an under 500 team. But Frankie Collins gives you that upside and that potential to get back to that point. If they can just get him some talent around him, I believe in Frankie Collins to be able to lead the charge for this team. Frankie Collins, he's the guy. Frankie Collins is the heart and soul of everything that the Sun Devils do on the court. He can bring that for you again in 2024-25 season. He is the guy. As long as he is here, I believe that Frankie Collins can really push this program to be highly competitive. And for what it's worth, they did go 14-18 this year. There was a handful of games they could have won and should have won. This very easily could have been an above 500 team. This could have been a team that, no, I don't know if I would say they were an NIT, but they are a much better team with Frankie Collins out there. You take Frankie Collins off this team, man, they're not good. Just call it what it is. Going in the next year, you take Frankie Collins off this team, you're very nervous because you do have a top 20 recruiting class coming in. You got a couple of 4-star kids. You will absolutely be attacking the transfer portal. You could still yield a good team, but you are significantly better when Frankie Collins is out there for you. And you have a much higher chance, possibility, and upside to be a really good basketball team with Frankie Collins on the court. He stays. He does this. He grows as a player. If he has another drastic increase in play, because from 22 to the 23 season, I would tell you he got massively better than what he was. Let's say that trend continues and he takes another big step forward. At worst, he has another memorable season. He would have back-to-back huge seasons for the team. He might be able to top his steals record. He might be able to be one of the highest scoring players of the last 5 years. There's a lot of potential here for Frankie to make history. And that's always going to be attractive for a player, for anybody. Why leave when you can be an all-timer? Frankie could be an all-timer. I believe that in my heart of hearts. This is absolutely one of the best players we've seen, at least the last 5 years. There's a potential for him to be one of the best players of the last 10, the last 20, however long. Maybe he's on the all-time roster. Who knows? What I do know is that there's a lot here to convince Frankie Collins to stay. You're the face of the program. You know the system. You're a fan favorite. You're just getting better every single year. And there's some history on the line. If you have back-to-back historic seasons, you're going to be beloved for the rest of your life. Because it's not going to matter if you go on to be an NBA Hall of Famer. It doesn't matter if you go Euro. It doesn't matter if you go down to any other league. You will be beloved for the rest of your life. And that's absolutely something worth considering. There's my argument for why Frankie Collins should consider staying at Arizona State. Again, he's down to 6 schools. ASU is one of those schools. He could very easily be back for the program. It is not the writing on the wall that he's going to be gone. There is absolutely a chance. And I would tell you it's a pretty decent chance. It's not like slim to none here. There's a lot that could convince Frankie to come back. I'm curious if you guys have any other reasons that he should come back. What you guys think of my opinions? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at Richie Brads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. We will be keeping you updated on the Frankie Collins situation. As soon as things happen, I will give you guys updates. I will also be giving you guys updates on Sun Devils football. We have another practice tomorrow, and I'll let you know everything that I got to see. I'll see you then. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.